I got to meet the bankers face to face, and I was very impressed that you put this meeting together and was really just sort of the mediator. And I thought that was a great use of your office, and just inserting yourself at that point made you a critical factor in a problem that eventually got resolved.
This is the Co-op and Condo Insider, the podcast dedicated to New York's cooperative and condominium communities. This is your trusted source for the latest insights, strategies, and stories shaping the world of shared housing. You will hear from the people who are leaders in this community, information and insights you will not hear anywhere else. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you're in the right place. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the host or any affiliated individuals or organizations.
Hello, and welcome to the Co-op and Condo Insider, where we explore the real-world issues facing co-op and condo communities across New York City with insight, expertise, and a healthy dose of straight talk. I'm your host, Jeffrey Maisel, co-op attorney and legal advisor to the President's Co-op and Condo Council. I'm thrilled to be joined by my co-host, Richard Solomon, a seasoned voice in public radio for over 20 years. Richard has taken his listeners around the world to meet experts, newsmakers, and the people making a real difference in our everyday lives. Richard, it's great to have you on the mic today.
Great to see you, Jeff. Just really awesome.
Okay, and we are honored to have a very special guest today, Council Member Francisco Moya. Francisco and I go way back, and we've had lots of adventures together, which we'll venture into in a minute. He represents the 21st Council District, encompassing East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Lefrak City, and his native Corona. Prior to his 2017 election to the council, Mr. Moya was elected to the 39th Assembly District in 2010, making him the first Ecuadorian-American elected to public office in the United States. That must have been quite an honor for you.
It's a tremendous honor still to this day to be representing my heritage, here in the United States.
Did it make news in Ecuador when you were elected?
And first, let me just start off by saying, Jeff, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Richard, thank you to both of you. Doing an amazing job on this podcast, the Co-op Condo Insider, always doing great things and making sure that the listeners, get the information that they need. So it's great to be on this. Look, for me, I think it was probably one of the greatest memories I have of getting elected and being in public office. I remember the night of my first election in 2010, when I got elected to the Assembly. I was very close to the ambassador of Ecuador. Now, I grew up here in Corona, Queens. It was basically all Italian at the time. And, we were the first Latino family on the block. And then the neighborhoods, as all of them do, they change, and now a lot of Ecuadorians. When word got out that I won, the ambassador, I was walking down the block from my house, my boyhood home, with my dad, my mom, my brother, and we had all of our victory parties at the local pizzeria down the block from my house. And as I'm walking down the block, I'm getting the phone calls. Hillary Clinton called, she was the senator at the time, and you're just getting all these great phone calls. And then the ambassador called, and he said, hey, I have someone on the phone who wants to say hello to you and congratulate you. And I said, great, sure. And it was the President of Ecuador. And I remember, putting the phone on my chest, turning to my dad and saying, Pop, you're not going to believe who's on the other line. And he's like, who is it? Now, my dad, I lost my dad 2 years ago, but my dad is a big mush. And my mom's always been the disciplinarian. And I saw his eyes just started to well up with tears, because he couldn't believe his youngest son won his election. The two, the president of his home country is calling his son to congratulate him on this election. And I remember seeing my dad just start to cry, and I was just a few feet away from getting into my victory party, and the emotions were there, and I started tear up a little bit. And I remember my mom grabbing me by the tie, and she's like, all right, well, button up here, you got to go speak in public now. It's all good. You can do this later.
Fix your hair.
Yeah, it's just that's how she was. But it was it was a great feeling, I think, and it's an honor to hold that title. But I always say, look, I may be the first, but I'm not going to be the last. And I think that there's a responsibility that I have also to help the younger generation of Ecuadorian Americans that are here move up in the world, whether it's politics or anything else. I feel that it's a duty for me to be able to do that and cultivate that as well. And it's a pretty important role that I take very seriously.
Is there a large Ecuadorian community in Queens and New York City in general?
We are the largest community in the borough of Queens. We are the fourth largest in New York City, right behind the Mexican community. We're almost there. New York City, Queens in particular, is the largest place outside of Ecuador that houses the most Ecuadorians outside of Ecuador.
And where is the best, most authentic Ecuadorian food? This is for Richard, by the way.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
going to get me in trouble because, there's so
Well,
many.
well, you've won many elections, so you know how to answer this diplomatically.
Good. I mean, there's a lot in the area, but I mean, there's two in particular that stand out for me the most. One is Rincon Milania. It's right off of Queens Boulevard. It's on the border of Woodside, Sunnyside. Like really top-notch food. And there's my guy who's on the Queens night market. He makes the best pernil sandwiches, like outside of Ecuador, that I've ever tasted. They both cater all my events because their food is so good. I mean, it is absolutely delicious. We have a lot of other great Ecuadorian restaurants. Please don't kill me that I didn't mention you. But you can blame Jeff for this.
Well, you're more than welcome to come on future podcasts, and we can read the list. So by the way, that was the best intro we've had. I think I might end the show here because I don't. That was a great story, really heartfelt. So, I read your bio. You started community organizing at age 15. You went to St. John's University. Me too. I went to law school there. I assume I was a few years before you. So how did you get involved in community organizing and your entree into politics? And we know about your first election, so build up to
it's a really interesting thing. I always wanted to be in elected office. My dad, up until his dying day, had this. It was an index card, and in the first grade, I went to St. Leo's school right here in Corona, Queens, and they asked me, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I wrote that I wanted to be an elected official. Right? I wrote.
How old were you at this point?
First grade, I think 5, 6 years old. Always had it. In me, and he always kept it in his wallet. As like a reminder, right, that this is something I wrote down. And when I was a teenager, I always got involved in the community. There was, I just used to love politics. I used to read about, all the different, people that I enjoyed watching. And my cousin, who lived on the same block, by the way, she got mugged coming home from work. And back then that was like completely unheard of, right? And right in front of her house. And so that led me to kind of like organize like my neighbors. And we started a block association, like a block watch, right? And, we would have these meetings in the basement of like my parents' home. And I got a small grant from then Councilwoman Helen Marshall. That got us like these like walkie-talkies, whistles, whatever that we were able to buy. And it really led me then to start looking at something like a much bigger scope of like beautification, removing graffiti, planting trees, all that. And it became not a block association anymore. It became the Corona Gardens Neighborhood Association. So it expanded. And I remember there was a big congressional race at the time. It was redistricting. Maybe you remember Stephen Solars was a congressman here. He got redistricted. And I remember sending to all the candidates, like to come and talk to our block association. And no one responded except a young firecracker of an activist by the name of Nydia Velasquez.
Okay.
And
I've heard of her.
Yeah. And she actually won. and she won that election, and myself, my older brother, my cousins, we got involved in her race. I was still like a teenager. And, she was like, uh, hey, come and uh, intern for me when you get older. My brother went to work for her, my cousin worked for her. It was really an entree into politics then, right? It was from a small little incident that sparked activism, sort of widened my uh, uh, perspective and idea of how politics really affects change locally. And after when I was in college, I went to St. John's undergrad, as you mentioned. Um, I I interned for her throughout. I went to work in D.C. I worked for two members of Congress. I worked for Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, Congressmember Brad Sherman from California. Before I came back up, I did my master's. I got a fellowship, right? Got my master's in public policy at Baruch College, the National Open Fellows. But then I went on to work for the New York State Senate. I was the secretary to the Senate under David Patterson, and worked my way through that, where led me to run for office. I ran for district leader here in the area. First,
How old were you then?
I was still in college.
Wow.
Maybe like
He was that guy that you think is going to be 35, and then you meet him and he's 18 years old.
yeah. And look, it was like I was always up for the fight, right? I always thought that I could effectuate change in the neighborhood that I grew up in, right? For me, it's the neighborhood that shaped me. This is something that is, in part of my DNA. Look, I bought the house I grew up in. Uh, I'm not going anywhere. And so to me, the importance of not just being in elected office, which, yes, that was a personal goal I was able to achieve, but it's also what you do when you get there, right? What is it that I want to be able to accomplish? What are the things that I want to do to not only be a a a good elected official, but how do I make my community better, right? And I remember uh, sitting down my first month into being elected to the New York State Assembly, and my chief of staff, Megan Taddeo, has been with me now 16 years since day one. I said, we're going to write down the 10 things, major things that we're going to put on this list. And at the end of how long this career is, if we can check off all these boxes, we can say we did everything, and we can walk away from this and say, wow, we really did a great job. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to check that last box off my list with the soccer stadium that's being built right now at Willets Point. And so, I've had a really great career, had great mentors, but I've also had a great family structure that really helped make me who I am today. And, my dad was an immigrant from Ecuador. He came here when he was 17 years old. He had $100 in his pocket, didn't know anybody, but he had a desire to succeed. He wanted to be an architect. And my dad knew he couldn't get the education back home, but he came here, and he wound up actually getting drafted and going to serve in Vietnam. Now imagine that. I could never imagine myself at 17, 18 years old, one, going and being in a foreign country by myself. Within a year or so of being here, you get drafted. You get sent to the front lines. Came back to Queens. When he came back, it's a great story. It's literally, I'm going to write the book that no one will read, but the World's Fair was happening, and he was walking, through the Great Lawn in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, and he said he saw the most beautiful woman he's ever seen in his life. That was my mom. And the funny thing is, they actually knew each other back home in Ecuador, and they met back here at Flushing Meadows Corona Park, the same park that I learned to play the beautiful game we call soccer here, where I live 4 blocks away from. So the whole nucleus here has always been about my family, my roots, the ability to get a good education, live the American dream, but also to be able to give back to my community in whatever way I can in the position that I have currently.
So true American hero, your father. I mean, he went to a foreign country that sent him to a foreign country, and I'm
And
sure.
I'll tell you this, Jeff, he scored like 163 or something on his IQ test, right? Borderline genius. I always joke. I'll give a speech like a graduation. I'll say like, my brother got my dad's brains, and I got my mom's good looks. Because my brother went to Ivy League. I didn't, but still, it was like my dad was based on. And
I can only imagine being there when his son got a phone call from the president of Ecuador. I can't imagine a father being prouder at that particular moment.
He was, he was a good man.
There's a word called kvelling. I don't think I think it's a Yiddish word, but it means proud. So let's get to some issues. We're talking about Corona, and by the way, Richard, the council member's office is across the street from Lemon. What's it? Lemon
Ice
King.
King.
Lemon Ice
I
King.
love. I'm there all the time.
And Parkside, right down from the bocce court. So now you got a visual of where he's
Let me
sitting.
tell you, I'm there all the time.
Well, come visit me. You can't miss me. I have a big sign with my face on it on top of the building. So
Next time I'm at Parkside, I'll see you before I go in.
there you go.
Your district was in the news for quite a while about safety concerns on Roosevelt Avenue. And I know you were very proactive in addressing those issues. Just explain what your role was and how things are today compared to how they were during the pandemic.
For me, I got, like I said, I'm born and raised here in Corona, Queens. Like I've seen everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I've never seen it this bad along Roosevelt Avenue. And, we started getting more increasing complaints from constituents about illegal vending, open air prostitution. When you get a phone call from a principal and like the PTA parent saying like, there's an illegal massage parlor with women outside scantily clad 50 feet from the entrance of a public school. And they're like soliciting the parents, the fathers that go there, it's like, it was unheard of. And when I saw that, I was like, this is not the neighborhood, is not the city that I know and grew up in, right? Like, there's always been some type of crime, but never the quality of life issues like we were seeing here. Like it was just, out of control. And I called the mayor and I said, look, I sent them video. I said, like, look what's going on here. I'm like, on Facebook and social media, there was a video circulating of someone that came to Corona and was showing them how to negotiate prices with, the prostitutes along Roosevelt Avenue. I'm like, this is my neighborhood. It's a destination. We have beautiful cultural museums here. The Louis Armstrong House. We have the Queen's Theater. We have so many different places for people to come enjoy food. I do not want my neighborhood to be associated with this. And when I send them that, I give it to the mayor because he showed up. I remember I got the call and he's like, it was like, I think 12 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock in the morning. And he goes, I'm here. And I went there with him and we walked there with the sergeant and he was like, holy crap, like you weren't kidding. This looks like a third world country. And I said, look, we need to do something here. Like people don't feel safe, right? This is, not going to be sustainable if we continue to do this. And, it wasn't just about arresting folks because you're never going to arrest your way out of gang violence or any of these issues. Like we needed to have a much more macro approach to this without failing my constituents who had to wake up every morning to go to work, come home, do shopping, and feel unsafe. And so we came up with this plan of what we called Restore Roosevelt Avenue, which we got rid of the illegal vending. We got rid of the prostitution and then focused in on it. I said, we can't just do one of these, like a raid here or there, because they'll just come right back. It has to be consistent. Like we have to apply, this, and it has to be with all jurisdictions in here. Every city agency that's involved, sanitation, the DA's office, buildings. Let's go after the landlords who are renting out, these locations to known, brahs, right? Like we got to do something here. And we put that together. And within, I want to say like 6 months of this program,
When was this? When was this? Done?
this started, we started November, I think November 23, finished out right before the end or right before the beginning of this summer. And the reduction was 28% within a year of all of this. And I think it just demonstrated that when you really have consistent, smart policing and have agencies deploy the resources necessary to these communities, it's not only about bringing back a sense of the quality of life here, but it brings back business, right? Because no business can sustain people saying, I'm not going there. No restaurant, nothing. No one wants to have, an illegal massage parlor operating in pure daylight in front of your business. You don't want to have illegal vendors selling the same products that you're selling right in front of your store, right? This has to change. And so by doing that, it really took effect, because then I had other colleagues of mine asking me, how did you do that? And try to replicate it in some of their parts of the districts as well throughout the city. And it proved to be a huge success.
So things are much better as we speak.
Things are much better. There still needs improvement, but you are not seeing anything remotely close to that. As a matter of fact, about a month and a half ago, I walked with now Deputy Mayor Kaz Daughtry. Friday night, it was around 11:30 on Junction Boulevard in Roosevelt, and we walked all the way down to about 82nd Street at night, unannounced. And we had cameras out, and what I saw even shocked me. Right at night on a Friday, I wouldn't walk down Roosevelt Avenue at that time. It was families were out, restaurants were packed. We had some like sanitation issues that we needed to take care of, but nothing major. I mean, then we got further out, and then we did see some of the things that still exist, but we're addressing those. And to see where that stretch that we walked from a year ago, it's just completely different. And I get calls all the time from business owners, from residents that have to take the subway, to go to work, who say, thank you. You got to keep it up. We can't let up, because we don't want to see, this bad element, come back to the streets again.
Great results. So we are called the Co-op Condo Insider. So one of my questions I always ask our guests is, explain to the importance of the co-ops and condos in your district, and just your engagement with them over your tenure as New York City Council member in that district, in your district.
I think that co-ops and condos are like they're a key element to stable housing, right? In my district, I think as we see the city that has grown more and more unaffordable, and home ownership, has kind of like dwindled and become like a pipe dream. I think that condos have offered that pathway to ownership for the middle class for a number of years. And I think that for me, it's always been important to work in partnership with the condo boards that I have, in my district. And how I met you, is really the anchor to like an example of how things can just spiral out of control, but how government can step in here and really make a difference in the lives of so many. Because as a co-op or a condo owner, you see the realities that we face, right? And some of the the laws that change that have like a direct impact on condo and co-op owners, right? It's real. And so, sometimes I think when people are trying to pass laws, they're not always thinking about the effect and the impact that it can have, on co-ops in the city of New York. And I think it's just really important that we help advocate.
One thing that we've advocated for, and I actually spoke to the mayor about this, is that when unfunded mandates are passed by the city council, especially with co-ops and condos, there should be an affordability study connected to it, so you can see the impact it would have on everyday pocketbooks. So let's talk about how we met. Well, I'll tell you where I was. I met you in your office. I don't remember all those beautiful posters and jerseys. I represented a large co-op in your district called Dorie Miller, and they were having a problem with their bank. They were having cash flow problems, and you sat us all down with the bankers. And it was the first time I got to meet the bankers face to face, and I was very impressed that you put this meeting together and was really just sort of the mediator. And I thought that was a great use of your office, and just inserting yourself at that point made you a critical factor in a problem that eventually got resolved.
Yeah, look, I think, and the respect, that I have for you, Jeff, on working not just with you on that, but just like, seeing how also you help navigate that shift, right? I mean, I think Dorie Miller was really the wake-up call for, how these foreclosures and how poorly managed boards can spiral out of control quickly, and really put the shareholders in such risk of losing their homes, right? And I think that when I was made aware of the situation, having reached out to a lot of the connections that I have, mutual friends and people that also knew the bank folks, to say, look, we got to resolve this, right? Like, going into foreclosure, like that's not the answer, right? Like, you want to get paid, we got to do this. But we got to structure it in a way that everybody wins. Do we need to get them, on a fiscal diet? 100%. But having people lose their homes was not the answer here, right? And I think it was for me, really important that we get this resolved, because if you meet the people, you're putting a face to these folks that may lose their home, right? They'll have nowhere to go. Some of them were seniors, most of them, right? And without the proper guidance, without the proper legal advice, this could have been a disaster. And I think it turned out well that, I was able to help negotiate this and put this together. And I'll never forget, I'm very close to one of the Baptist churches here, and the pastor Young, who has a lot of his clergy that are in Dorie Miller. He said, Moya, one thing is, when you save someone's home, you're, a hero for life. And I never took it that way, right? It was just like more of like, hey, I think I'm just doing my job here, right? Like, and I'm not trying to sound like, I'm downplaying it, but this is my neighborhood. Like, I grew up here. I don't want to see my neighbors be displaced. I don't want to see seniors have to suffer, in their, a time where they should be enjoying their retirement. Having been able to save that and fix it, to me was really gratifying. But it also is good that these folks also found the right people like yourself to guide them through that. But also they learned, the mistakes that they should never make again, in order to keep their equity, in order to keep their homes, and in order to move forward. And I'm just really happy that it all turned out to work itself out, and got to save Dorie Miller.
Yeah, and I can safely say, because I was a witness, that your intervention and using your skills and the procedure of your office slowed down that foreclosure process and stopped everybody and said, let's sit down and talk. It took a long time, but they finally secured financing, and they are a stable co-op as we speak today. So that's another big one and another great story.
So let's talk about soccer and this incredible stadium. So if you think about it, you got the tennis center, you got Citi Field, and you got the soccer. So we're now a sports mega center in many ways, and that's, I guess, the finishing touch of the trilogy. You want to talk about how all that came about,
Yeah,
and
look,
all your efforts?
I've always had a vision board, right? And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I learned how to play soccer in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, right? It was in the shadows of Shea Stadium. And, I had this belief that I would go pro. My mind said I could, my body said no. So I've always loved soccer, coming from a South American family, you're born with a soccer ball in your crib, right? And it's when sometimes people don't understand soccer, I tell them it's cultural. It really is cultural. Like, there's a sense of pride and community that you don't get in like the NFL or Major League Baseball. And I remember when I first got elected to the New York State Assembly. Do you remember when the Jets wanted to come to New York, and
Yeah.
there was a possibility that they were going to go to the West Side Highway, or they may come into Flushing Meadows Corona Park. I knew that land was available, and the first thing I did was I wrote a letter to Don Garber, the commissioner of Major League Soccer. I didn't even have my name on the letterhead. It just said New York State Assembly. This is my first month as an assemblyman. My committees weren't even listed on my website. It just had my picture on it. And I said, Commissioner, I'm a big fan. By the way, he is from Queens as well. And I said, I know that the expansion team is coming. The expansion lottery is coming to Major League Soccer in 2013. This is in 2011. And I said, I have the perfect location for a soccer stadium and for New York City to have its first own professional team. New York, New Jersey Red Bulls, they play New Jersey. They're New Jersey. They're not New York, right? I didn't hear from him for 6 months. And then I finally got a call, and it was from his office, and they said, hey, the commissioner would like to meet with you. And he's like, I'm sorry, I had no idea who you were. He's like, you didn't have anything, up and running. And I said, no, I know. And for 12 years, 13 years, I think it took for me to finally, be able to position myself to find the land, which was Willets Point. And if you remember, there was so many different iterations of Willets Point. They're going to have retail and all this other stuff that was coming in, and they were going to have market rate housing. And when I got into the city council, I just took that project over and I said, look, I have this idea. We're going to bring professional soccer to the borough of Queens, and I have the location. And what we're going to do here is not just build a soccer stadium, but we're going to build a brand new name, right? Because they had Related was involved with this. They had the housing piece to this. And I said, look, I'm going to form a Willets Point task force. I got Melinda Katz involved at the time. I've got all the stakeholders, city, state, community board members, housing advocates, everyone. Get on so that we can talk about what's the possibility there. All agreed that a soccer stadium should come. And they were going to go to the Bronx. And I actually had another soccer team coming in before NYCFC, but their project died in the Bronx. And so they came back to the fold. And we worked tremendously. It's great to, have wonderful partners in New York City Football Club because they committed to building the stadium 100% privately financed. That gave me the opportunity to get the housing there to be 100% affordable housing. The first time in 4 decades that we have 2,500 units of affordable housing coming to the city of New York. We're in a housing crisis. We're going to have families actually in those apartments by the end of this year. And we did something nobody else ever did. We built the housing first. The stadium's coming later. I wanted to demonstrate that this wasn't going to be empty promises like, Barclays in Brooklyn that 12 years into this, they still haven't fulfilled any of the community benefits that they have going on. We built it. They committed to build it 100% union labor, 14,000 union jobs coming in here. We got a brand new school, 650-seat school, built a brand new neighborhood where, in The Great Gatsby, it's called, the ashes of Willard
Valley
Point.
of the Ashes, Valley of the
Ashes. It's right there. And so, now we've transformed this into an actual neighborhood that has a soccer stadium, right? So that just comes in with that. And it's, like I said, it's going to be my legacy.
Now, what's the seating capacity, number of games expected at home?
Seating capacity is 25,000. It has the ability to go up to like 30, 35 if they needed to. And then the season is about and play like 17 home games there. But it's also going to be a place that is open to the community. So year round, for graduations, community meetings, all of that, it's going to be there. And they're going to be headquartered there. So a lot of times, sports arenas come in, but they're not headquartered where the stadium is. And it's going to be something really, really special. I can't wait because it's already 3 months ahead of schedule. The building of the soccer stadium. March for the kickoff of the season. March 2027, we'll be inaugurating the New York City Football Club, New York's first ever soccer-specific stadium at Etihad Park, and I'll have a tear in my eye when I'm on that pitch.
And Jeff and I will do a remote podcast from there.
100%.
I just want to say we really appreciate you spending time with us and sharing these stories. And you can add to your list of accomplishments. You are now a co-op and condo insider. It's official.
I love it. I love it.
Any last words?
Look, I just want to say thank you, Jeff. Richard, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. It's like if I'm sitting in the living room with two friends and, we're just, shooting the stuff together. And I think you're doing a tremendous job making sure that we're educating folks about the importance of some of the laws that change that, have a profound impact on, co-op and condo owners. These are major things. Queens is a borough that has, some of the most co-op and condo owners throughout. And I think the service that you're doing here is tremendous. And I'm just really honored to have been able to be a guest on your podcast.
So again, thank you again, Francisco Moya. Best of luck in your future's endeavors. And this is Jeffrey Maisel, along with my co-host, Richard Solomon, saying thank you for listening. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Co-op and Condo Insider. We hope you found today's conversation informative and insightful. Don't forget to subscribe. We're available on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, stay informed.